Family forgot my birthday and casually said we didn't think you'd care. I laughed and quietly went on vacation alone. A day later, my phone blew up when they realized. Turns out I do care. That was the caption. Just 4 words under a photo of me on a quiet stretch of beach, drink in hand, sun dipping low behind me, and a look on my face that said more than any long-winded message ever could. I dropped it into the family group chat without fanfare. No explanation, no context. Just that photo. Within minutes, my phone began vibrating like a live wire. But let me rewind. My birthday fell on a Wednesday this year. Not a milestone, not a big party kind of day. But still, a birthday. The one day a year where you hope the people closest to you will remember, will say something. Anything. I wasn't expecting balloons or surprise parties. I'm not that kind of guy. But I thought I'd get a text. Maybe a call. Maybe a dumb meme from my younger brother or a voicemail from my mom singing off-key like she always used to. Instead, I got silence. It started small. Waking up to a quiet phone. Refreshing it out of habit, assuming a message would come through any second. Then breakfast. Still nothing. By noon, I thought. Maybe they're waiting until later. Dinner time came and went. Crickets. I even checked to see if the group chat was active, half hoping maybe someone had said something but tagged the wrong thread. Nope. They were talking, all right, just not to me. There was a long chain of messages from the day before. My sister, Lindsay, sharing pictures of her new puppy. My mom talking about her upcoming bridge tournament. Dad forwarding some political cartoon I didn't bother to open. Everyone chimed in. Everyone except me. And my birthday? Not a whisper. I told myself it didn't matter. I had dinner alone, tried to focus on the good. I'd gotten a decent bonus at work. The apartment was finally quiet after months of construction noise. But that night, lying in bed, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud in a different way. The next morning, still no messages. So I sent one. Just a simple line in the group chat. Hey, just realized, none of you said anything yesterday. It was my birthday. It was meant to be gentle. A nudge. A reminder. I expected someone to apologize, maybe say it slipped their mind. Instead, Lindsay replied, "We didn't think you'd care." That was it. 6 words that landed like a punch to the chest. I stared at it for a while, rereading it as if maybe I was misinterpreting the tone. I wasn't. That sentence did more damage than a full day of silence. I didn't reply. Not then. Not with words. I smiled quietly, set my phone down, and opened a browser. There's a trip I'd talked about for years. A place I'd always dreamed of visiting. Something about the remoteness of it, the sense that it's a whole world away, always called to me. Every time I brought it up, someone in my family would scoff. That's a lot of money for sand and water. Wouldn't you rather go somewhere practical? You can't do that kind of trip alone, it's depressing. But suddenly, I wanted exactly that. I didn't need company. I didn't need permission. I needed a reset. So I booked the ticket. Paid in full. No points, no discounts. Just peace. Then I packed my bags, made sure work was squared away, and slipped out the door. No one knew. I didn't leave a note. Didn't post anything. Just boarded the plane and disappeared. And that's where the story begins. Not on my birthday, not with the silence, but with the moment I chose to stop asking to be seen. The airport buzzed with the usual chaos, overhead announcements, the rush of people weaving through security. But for me, every sound became a gentle reminder of leaving it all behind. I remember the moment I realized that every sympathetic text, every call I'd waited for would never come. It was liberating in its own way. Boarding the plane, I settled into my window seat, watching the familiar cityscape shrink beneath me. I wasn't sad. Not really. I felt a quiet thrill at the thought of solitude, the freedom to just be without the weight of family expectations. The flight was long enough for me to sink into a reverie. I pulled out an old travel journal I'd kept for years, sketched maps of destinations I dreamt of, handwritten quotes about adventure, and scribbles of my wildest escapes. Now, with every mile, those pages seemed to whisper promises of a new beginning. Hours later, the plane descended over a coastline that looked almost surreal. Golden beaches lined by rugged cliffs, a deep blue ocean stretching endlessly. I stepped off into a gentle warmth that immediately washed over me, melting the remnants of that cold, biting disappointment from home. I felt an odd calm. Here, the world was vast and indifferent, and I was free to define my own worth. My first night was spent in a modest bungalow that overlooked the sea. I sat on the small porch, a cool cocktail in hand, and listened to the rhythmic lap of waves, a soothing metronome that replaced the discord of silence I'd endured back home. Every sound, every breath of wind, seemed to validate my choice. I wasn't running away. I was moving towards something real, a life that wouldn't rely on hollow family rituals. Yet, as I drifted off to sleep under a sky so clear it felt like a cosmic promise, I couldn't help but think, this was more than a vacation. It was a silent declaration that I deserved better. And with that realization, the journey was no longer just an escape, it was the first step toward a life where my happiness mattered most. The morning light streamed through gauzy white curtains as the waves rolled in steady, unbothered. I sat cross-legged on the porch again, barefoot, my coffee cooling beside me. That familiar ache in my chest, the one that had followed me for years like a shadow, felt quieter now. Not gone. Just lighter. I had no plan for the day. No itinerary. No one expecting me to check in or report back. And for the first time in a long while, that didn't feel lonely. It felt like breathing room. Around mid-morning, I wandered down to the beach. The sand was warm, the water unbelievably clear. I found a tucked-away spot beneath a leaning palm, laid back in a sun-worn chair, and ordered a drink from the nearby beach bar. It came in a tall glass with fruit and a little paper umbrella. Ridiculous, indulgent, and perfect. That's when the idea struck me. I pulled out my phone, opened the group chat. No one had said anything since Lindsay's "We didn't think you'd care" reply. The same thread where birthdays were usually flooded with heart emojis and inside jokes, where they'd once posted 17 messages about my niece's lost tooth. Silence. I lifted my phone and framed the shot, the beach behind me, drink in hand, my feet barely in view. But it was my expression that mattered most, a half smile, not smug but calm. Like I had stumbled into something sacred. Click. I tapped the screen. No message. Just the photo. And then beneath it, I typed, "Turns out I do care. Send." Then I turned my phone off. I didn't wait for the reaction. Didn't wonder how they'd interpret it. I just slid the phone into my bag, closed my eyes, and let the sun warm my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. It started with a buzz. Then another. I didn't turn my phone on right away. I let it sit there, muted and vibrating deep in the canvas of my beach bag, like a panicked heartbeat trying to be heard. It wasn't until the sun began its slow descent behind the horizon, casting the water in copper and blood orange hues, that I picked it up again. 37 missed notifications. Group chat alive again after a full day of radio silence. The first message came from my mom. "Wait, where are you?" Then Lindsay, "Was that real? Are you actually gone?" Then the others started pouring in. Dad, who rarely texts throat. "You could have told someone you were leaving," which was rich, coming from a man who didn't even remember the reason I left in the first place. My younger cousin even chimed in. "Dang, that's a power move." He always liked drama, even if he didn't understand it. But most of the messages weren't curious. They were defensive, confused, panicked, like they had all suddenly realized something was missing from their carefully arranged little orbit, and that thing was me. Lindsay sent 3 voice notes in a row, none of which I played. The preview text alone told me what I needed to know. "Okay. I didn't mean it like that. We just thought you never made a big deal of birthdays. I was having a rough day too, you know?" There it was. The slow pivot from indifference to justification to guilt. And the thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Not in the way I used to be, back when I still hoped they'd wake up one day and just see me. What I felt now was something colder, cleaner, done. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just done. They didn't even realize how long I'd been fading out of the family photo, background by louder voices and shinier stories. How many years I've been handing over parts of myself, time, energy, care, and getting crumbs in return. How often I'd laughed off being overlooked just to keep the peace. But that one sentence? We didn't think you'd care. That cracked it wide open. And now they were scrambling, desperate to rewind something that had been unraveling for years. But I wasn't interested in rewinding. I was already somewhere else, somewhere warmer, quieter, mine. The island had a rhythm of its own. By the second morning, I woke not to an alarm, not to the drone of emails or half-hearted family group messages, but to the sound of waves breathing in and out like a heartbeat older than time. I moved slower. I chewed longer. I noticed things. The shape of clouds, the way sunlight filtered through palm fronds, the laughter of strangers who didn't know my name and didn't need to. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was bracing for something. No one expected anything of me here. No one was disappointed or unimpressed. No one kept me around out of obligation or convenience. I wasn't a placeholder son, the overlooked sibling, the friend who always remembered birthdays no one returned. I was just a guy drinking coffee on a porch overlooking the sea. And that? That was enough. Back home, the messages didn't stop. My cousin Tyler sent a long paragraph about how everyone had been really busy lately and meant to plan something. My mom called twice, then left a voicemail I didn't listen to. The group chat kept buzzing, threads unraveling with apologies wrapped in excuses. Even my dad, ever blunt, sent a message that almost shocked me. Look, maybe we messed up. But you're making a big deal out of one missed birthday. That's when I knew. They still didn't get it. It wasn't about the birthday. Not really. It was about being forgotten so effortlessly that when I reminded them, they thought I was the one being dramatic. They thought silence was something I wouldn't mind because I never made noise. Because I never demanded to be heard. I'd always laughed, always shrugged, always swallowed it down. But I wasn't hungry anymore. That afternoon, I sat at a small beach cafe. The ocean just beyond the railing. A woman at the next table smiled at me. Not in a flirty way, just kindness, recognition. It felt strange, being seen so easily by someone who didn't know a single thing about me. And I thought, this is the life I want. Not the one where I keep trying to prove I deserve space in other people's plans. The one where I build something from stillness, from peace, from the startling, beautiful quiet of being enough on my own. That night, I watched the moon drag its silver trail across the water like it had somewhere to be and wasn't in a rush. I sat alone, no music, no phone, just the of insects and the slow churn of the tide. And I realized something. I'd never been lonely here. Not once. Which was strange, because for years, I thought solitude was the thing I feared most. I'd filled every corner of my life with people, family, friends, co-workers, always trying to be useful, likable, agreeable, always available, always saying yes. I thought staying connected meant staying safe. That being forgotten was the worst thing that could happen. But the truth, the worst thing wasn't being forgotten. It was remembering, in those quiet taking moments, just how little space you ever really took up in the places you thought were yours. I used to believe love meant patience. That if I kept showing up, kept giving, kept shrinking myself to fit their world, eventually someone would notice. Someone would say, "Hey, we see you. We're grateful. You matter." But they didn't. And now that I was gone, they did what they always do. They reacted. Not because they miss me, but because they miss the version of me who made everything easier for them. They miss the available me. The quietly dependable me. The one who didn't ask for much and took whatever scraps of affection were thrown his way. But that version of me? He stayed home. The man on this island, the one with sand between his toes and a spine that finally straightened under the weight of no one else's expectations, he was something different. He was done performing, done waiting, done belonging to people who only noticed his absence, never his presence. When I finally turned my phone back on, 3 days since I'd sent that photo, the screen lit up like a slot machine. Over 100 missed notifications, voicemails stacked on top of each other, missed calls from numbers I recognized by heart, and a few I didn't. The group chat was unrecognizable now. Where there used to be one-liners and lazy memes, there were long, frantic messages, one after another. Mom, please call me. I didn't realize how hurt you were. Dad, you could have just talked to us instead of disappearing. Lindsay, I didn't mean it that way. I swear, we can plan something for when you're back. Uncle Joe, your mom's really upset. Can you just text her? Lindsay again, seriously? Ignoring us now? This is childish. Then not long after. Okay, I'm sorry. Please just let us know you're safe. Guilt, anger, pleading, back to guilt. They cycled through every emotion, but the one that might have mattered most understanding. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry that I finally reacted to it. And yet I read every word. It would have been a lie to say I didn't feel something. A small part of me, the same part that used to stay up late remembering childhood birthdays where I'd wait for them to notice the card I made, the help I offered, the effort I gave, still wanted a fix. Still wanted someone to step up and say, we were wrong. But none of them did. They just wanted it to blow over. Wanted me to come back, resume my role. Let the silence return to its familiar, comfortable, so I gave them a silence that was louder. I muted the group chat. One by one, I tapped the names selected, blocked, and felt a strange sense of peace every time the confirmation popped up. There was no satisfaction, just clarity. This wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about freeing myself from the echo chamber of being tolerated. Then, finally, I opened my contacts list and stared at the number I'd had since I was 16, and I changed it. A new number. No more unread apologies. No more birthday silence. No more pretending we were something we weren't. That night, I walked the shoreline until the tide reached my ankles, the surf cool and insistent, washing away any final trace of hesitation. I didn't need their noise anymore. The plan had been 1 week. 7 days to unwind, to reset, to catch my breath. But as my final day approached, something in me refused to go back. The thought of returning to the same familiar spaces, the same polite indifference, the same slow erosion of self, it felt heavier than any suitcase I'd packed. So I walked down to the front desk of the little beach resort, and asked, any chance I could extend my stay? The woman smiled, typing quickly. How long are we thinking? I hesitated. Then said, let's start with 2 more weeks. 2 turned into 4. And somewhere between hiking jungle trails and sipping morning coffee on balconies carved into cliff sides, something shifted. I stopped counting the days. I stopped checking the calendar entirely. I started making small, quiet plans, not for return flights or apologies, but for living. A coastal town a few hours south was looking for someone to help run a local guest house. A friend of a friend, a quiet man named David who'd grown tired of managing it alone, offered me a place to stay if I helped out a few days a week. Nothing formal. Just space, time. A bed. A chance. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. And I found I liked the rhythm of slow, deliberate days. Cooking simple meals. Walking to town barefoot. Fixing things with my hands. No expectations. No trying to be what someone else needed. For the first time, I had room to ask myself what I needed. Some days the old doubts crept in. Was I being selfish? Was I running? But every time I walked through the village and someone greeted me by name, or sat by the sea with a book and no interruptions, I knew the answer. No. I wasn't running. I was finally arriving. It was a Tuesday when it hit me. I was sweeping the stone steps outside the guest house, the sun soft and low over the trees, when I caught my reflection in a dusty window pane. I stopped. It was such a simple thing. My own face, older than I remembered, tan from weeks in the sun, the crease between my brows finally softening. I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because for the first time, I looked at peace. There was no audience here. No role to perform. No sibling to outshine or parent to appease. Just me, sweeping the steps of a quiet guest house on the edge of a new life. And I thought, this is who I've always been beneath the noise. It wasn't a grand epiphany. No lightning bolt. Just a quiet knowing. The version of me they forgot on my birthday, the one they assumed wouldn't care, was gone. And in his place stood someone sturdier, softer too, not in a fragile way, but in that solid, unshakable way that comes from no longer needing permission to take up space. I hadn't spoken to my family in over a month now. I didn't miss them. Not because I hated them, but because I finally understood the kind of love I had been chasing didn't exist in that house. I'd spent so many years bending myself into versions of the son, the brother, the dependable one they'd accept. And they still didn't. Not because I wasn't enough, but because they never looked closely enough to see what was in front of them. Sometimes, people only value what they lose when it's too far gone to reach. And by then, it's not their right to have it back. I wiped my hands on my shorts and looked around the garden, the porch, the hammock swinging gently in the breeze and thought, I want to stay. Not just for another few weeks. For good. I never told them I wasn't coming back. I didn't need to. The silence they used to give me, I gave it back, but this time, it had weight, purpose. It wasn't empty. It was full of peace. I changed my number, closed my old accounts, rented a small place above the cafe where I now help in the mornings. The sea is always just a few steps away. I wake up with the sun, fall asleep without worry. I didn't need a grand finale or some emotional confrontation. Just stillness, freedom. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for the people who never saw me to suddenly start trying because I see me now, and that's enough. Bye-bye.